The Illini are going head-to-head against the two-time national champions for a recruit. What are their chances? Locked on Illini. Let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, if you'd like to support the show, please find us on your favorite audio platform or on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I think as of this recording, we're at 1,287 subscribers on YouTube. If we can hit 1,300 by the time for the Purdue kickoff, I think that's going to send good vibes to everybody. So let's start it off right now. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this for the first time, I do this daily, every single day. If you're an Illini fan, I throw out a 30-minute episode talking about what's going on in Illinois sports. My name, by the way, is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast or do a search on all social medias for Locked On Illini. And you can keep up to date and you can message me. Let me know what kind of content you want to watch, what kind of content you want to see. This is not just my show. This is your show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, this is a live episode, so if you have any comments or questions, let me know in the chat. I'll get to them in the third segment. I like to make this a collaborative effort. I've had a lot of fun doing this over the last couple of weeks now. It seems the live episodes have done really well. Today, we're going to start off talking about we're talking a little basketball. We're talking Jacob Furphy, an Australian kid who just completed, I believe, his visit to Champaign. I believe it started on Sunday and it ended either this morning or late last night. Jacob is a 6'4" combo guard from Australia. And I mean, this guy's pure craft and skill. He doesn't really show you much on the athleticism side, but with the two recent recruits that Illinois has gotten in what's the name? Brandon Lee and Keaton. Jacob Furphy's ceiling is obviously much higher. He's the guy who, if he were to come to Illinois, could basically replace Kasparis in his first season. There's a lot of talk about Kasparis being a one and done. And hopefully, I hope he is a one and done because that probably means that Kasparis had a very good year. Jacob is one of those guys who can come right in and just basically take his spot, whether it's next to Kylan Boswell or a different guard. He's the type of high ceiling player that we think, Orlando Antigua, although Jeff Alexander's the one who's behind this recruitment, is after. It's high end, and I'm not just saying it's high end. It's high end because of the team that Illinois is competing with for Furphy's services, and that's UConn, the two-time back-to-back national champions. They're also after Furphy, and I believe they have scheduled an official visit with Jacob as well. Jacob hasn't set a date for when he wants to commit, so this isn't one of those where it's imminent one way or the other. I think he's going to take his time. I don't know much about his background in the sense of what he's looking for. Is he looking to fast track himself to the NBA? Is he looking to maximize NIL dollars? All that stuff matters. I just don't know where he comes from just because he doesn't really play locally or domestically. He had a fantastic FIBA under 18 Asia Cup, averaging 17 points per game, shooting 46% on almost 5 attempts per game. And it was he got high praise from Sam Vecini, a senior writer for The Athletic. I want to make sure I had that pronounced correctly. He said he's just an absolute hooper, tough as hell, competitive, winner, insane hoop IQ, super skilled. Felt the same way watching him that I did the first time I saw Jamie Jaquez in 2018. That was a tweet of him back in January. Again, it's tough when you're going up against UConn for a player, right? I don't know if it's my confidence level, but now when I see that we're competing against an Arkansas or a Duke or a North Carolina, I always think, especially with the staff that we have on hand, that there's a good shot. It's hard to argue that UConn isn't the number one program in the entire country right now. What Dan Hurley has done with that team over the last few years, they're an offensive machine. They're fun to watch. They're fun to be a fan of. And it wouldn't I don't consider it a huge loss if you lose to a program like UConn. Now, UConn can basically sell, hey, you can be the next Spencer here for the Huskies. And when they kind of zero in on a guy, they can get them just because of how high their program has been performing lately. But what does Furphy want? Does he want to be another cog in the machine? Because UConn is going to be equally as loaded next year and the year after that, because that's just what Dan Hurley does. At Illinois, he could be one of the focal points. He could be one of the primary players, just like Kasparis has been talked about for this upcoming year. And Underwood basically mentioned that on a John Rothstein podcast just yesterday, which I'll talk about later on this week, where he said Kasparis looks like he's kind of separated himself from the rest of the team when it comes to your primary basketball player. So I wanted to update you guys. So he just completed his official visit to Champaign. I'm not nearly as confident on getting this commitment as I may have been in the past with the two recent commitments that we've gotten. But the fact that we're toe-to-toe with a program like UConn, again, two-time national championship, kind of tells you where we are as a program ourselves. And what is it that Jacob wants? Does Jacob want to be the primary guy on a team, or does he want to go to a program that, is basically competing for national championships every single year? Now, granted, Illinois could be in that conversation as well, but I'll do a little digging in. I'll try to find out what Jacob's trying to look for. I know he just visited campus this week, so I've got a couple contacts who I'll be able to reach out to and get more feedback. Let me ask you a question. If your son or daughter was a basketball prep recruit, would you, now I understand there's going to be a little bias here, would you try to direct them towards a school like Illinois? Or if a school like UConn comes calling, would you tell them, maybe let's go ahead and listen to that UConn offer and be understandable that a kid wants to sign with a two-time national champion? I want to hear what you guys think. And right after this, we're going to talk to the majestic Big Ten Ted. All right, Illini fans, it's time for the Roy Player of the Week. The Roy app lets you directly support your favorite athletes. Unlike collectives where you make a donation to a general fund, Roy lets you choose the specific athlete you want to support. You back the players you care about, and in return, get exclusive content after the season, like personal videos and updates. And the best part? It's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't create the content, you get your money back. This week, obviously, the Illinois Fighting Illini did not play, so I could not pick an Illini player to send this money to. So I'm actually picking Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback. And why not? I just contributed $100 to his campaign on Roy and want you to join me by making a payment as little as $10. Now, keep in mind, just because I picked the Vanderbilt quarterback does not mean you have to. You can, of course, keep supporting Luke Altmaier, Caden Fagan, any of your favorite Illini players. For me, what Diego did against Alabama, being, in my opinion, the best player on that field on Saturday, he deserves it. And I know he made a little tweet about it to contact his agent in regards to NIL deal. So, I'm just kind of bringing more attention to a player who I think needs more attention. When enough of us contribute, it's not just about the dollars. It's about the message we send to players like Diego or Caden Fagan together. Our collective support helps keep him connected to our school. Plus, Roy is doing their part to bring fans closer to their schools and athletes with an exciting giveaway. Roy is giving one lucky fan 2 tickets to any game of their choice in November. Here's how to enter. Just download Roy in the App Store or Google Play. Use code LOCKEDON when signing up, and you're entered. Already on Roy? Make a payment to any athlete's campaign, and you'll also automatically be entered. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for official rules. Download Roy and try it out. There's no subscription, no recurring fees, and for as little as $10, you can get in the NIL game. Roy, support the players, change the game. All right, we got a little basketball taste in there. Now let's go ahead and talk football again. It's Tuesday, so of course on Tuesday we bring in my dear friend, Ted. There you are. How are you, Ted?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be talking football once again for another week here on Locked On Illini. So it's going to be a good week. This is going to be a cinematic week in the Big Ten. There are going to be some fantastic matchups, and I think even when you go past those first two, it's still going to be pretty darn good as well. Of course, you know the Purdue Cannon on the line for the Boilermakers and the Illini this weekend. So it should be an outstanding weekend of football.
Yeah, absolutely. We will get to that in a second, but Teddy, I'm kind of doing a reset in the sense we're coming out of a bye week and doing a quick evaluation of where the Big Ten kind of stands now. We're at week 6 or 7. And, there's some teams that are surprise teams like Illinois, teams like Indiana, Rutgers. And then there's some teams that have been kind of disappointing, let's put in the kind words, like maybe a Michigan. I saw an episode you did yesterday on Big Nation, which, by the way, please check out Big Ten Ted's channel right here on YouTube. I say this every single week. There's nobody who does better Big Ten focused content than Ted. And it was kind of similar to what I talked about on my episode of Locked On Illini yesterday, where I basically brought up the fact that it's not out of question that if Illinois is able to upset Michigan, and I don't even know right now if it would be an upset, if we're going to be honest, like what the Vegas line would be. If Illinois is able to take care of Michigan, and they might be favored the rest of their schedule, and all of a sudden, I'm putting in a loss to Oregon there just because I'm trying to be logical. But if Illinois can end up being 10-2, I think they're clearly in that college football playoff conversation. And it's a conversation that no one else has really brought up yet. And as I got through that first segment, I convinced myself even more that, hey, this could be a possibility. So a brain that I trust, an opinion I trust, so much. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy for Illinois. I got their schedule here pulled up. You mentioned what they got coming up. That Michigan game, I think, is very key, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the Red Grange game. The way it was just announced yesterday, it's going to be on CBS. That is going to be – everybody's talking about how great this weekend is going to be, and it's going to be great. But that next weekend where you got Nebraska and Indiana on Big Noon, and then you got this game on CBS, that is a tremendous showcase, I think, for the Illini in that game against Michigan. But – if they're able to win that game against Michigan, and then you got Oregon the next week, which, Oregon's Oregon, right?
Sure, right.
The stretch run in the month of November, Minnesota, Michigan State at home, at Rutgers, at Northwestern. Probably Vegas favorites in all 4 of those games. Probably. We'll see what Rutgers does here the rest of the year. And we'll see what maybe Minnesota. But all Brett Bielema does is beat the Minnesota Golden Gophers, right? So you look at the rest of that schedule, if you're sitting there at 10-2, and your only losses are to, let's say, at the very least, top 10 teams, Oregon and Penn State, and you get a win against Michigan. Maybe Michigan goes something like 8-4 this year, and maybe they're close to being ranked or in the receiving votes category. This is a 10-2. Like, you got to think a 10-2 team from the Big Ten is going to make it in. It's just a matter of who's going to go 10. And I think the big question is, I think we feel pretty good about that top 3. We feel pretty good about Ohio State. We feel pretty good about Oregon, and we feel pretty good about Penn State. Then I think it's that 4th team. Sure. Because I think the Big Ten is going to get in a 4th team. It's just a matter of who it is. I think Illinois is in that discussion based on who they're playing down the stretch here. But like I said, it all comes down to that Michigan game. If they fall in the Michigan game, I think maybe those discussions maybe maybe set sail. But that's the game that they have to find a way to win in that Red Grange game over there. But they're a balanced football team. We've talked about it in this program before. This is a team that can run. This is a team that can throw. This is a team that's playing much better on the defensive side of the football, but we'll see. I hate to talk about it, but you gotta talk about Indiana a little bit as well. Right now, whether you love them or whether you hate them, a lot of people love them. They're kind of the darling, aren't they? Right now, they have a bye week. Them and Nebraska actually have a bye week this week, but the week after that, I think, is going to tell us a lot about IU. I said that they were maybe in that discussion, and I put a maybe on them because I want to see them play Nebraska. And then I want to see him play Washington the game after. I think that's going to tell us a lot more about – we're going to learn a lot more about the Hoosiers in the next 2 games than we did in the first 6. Okay? Like, if that's a really good Nebraska defense, right? We know about that. But if they can find a way to – let's call it split Nebraska and Washington, you look at them the rest of the way, a lot like Illinois. If they can beat Michigan at home, they set themselves up for like if they lose to Nebraska per se, they come back, they beat Washington, who is receiving votes this week after the win against Michigan. They beat Michigan, they lose to Ohio State. They're sitting there at 10-2. Maybe Illinois and Indiana are sitting there at 10-2, and they don't play each other. Could we see the Illini and the Hoosiers in the playoffs and not Michigan and USC? I know maybe there might be some people that are wearing suits that are in charge of TV networks that might not like that. I love it. I love seeing these teams that aren't necessarily mentioned in this playoff discussion be mentioned. It's great to see this sort of thing. So I know you've talked about this before, says, hey, it's kind of a bummer Illinois doesn't play Indiana. Maybe, just maybe, it could happen in a playoff game. Who knows? But I think those are the teams that we got to start to mention. Iowa's hanging around, if all of a sudden Caleb Johnson runs like he's been running before Ohio State at that Ashton Genty type of level, and that defense continued to play well. You look at the rest of their schedule, they could be 10-2 when all is said and done. What if Iowa State goes something like 10-2 or 11-1, and they win the Big 12 this year, and Ohio State's Ohio State? Now all of a sudden your 2 losses don't look too bad if you're the Iowa Hawkeyes. So there's a group of teams, and they all begin with the letter I, right? All of these I teams are kind of grouped right now in the Big Ten. And here's the thing about it. They could all be 10 wins because the beauty of well, you could argue beauty. But, the thing about a mega conference is most of the teams don't play each other, right, in a given year. And that's kind of where we sit right now. So this is a fascinating this is going to be a fascinating last half to the season to see how this all plays out and to see if some of these schools like Illinois, right, can certainly get to that level, right? I maybe lean more towards Indiana and Illinois than I do Iowa right now. Iowa is a little bit like Michigan, even though I think Iowa might have a little bit of a better overall number 1 talent in their running back room in Caleb Johnson. I know Kaleo Mullins has been really good so far this year, but I just think Indiana and Illinois are a lot more balanced right now than the Iowa Hawkeyes, and that's going to help them out in the end. So as if you couldn't tell, I am pumped. I am pumped about this stretch run.
You and I both. Indiana obviously is the fun story of the season, and somehow I've turned myself into some sort of Hoosier hater over the last couple of weeks, and it's I promise it's not on purpose. It's just simply one of those where I take a look at their schedule, and we'll go over it real quick. They play FIU, then Western Illinois, at UCLA, home at Charlotte, home Maryland, at Northwestern. When I try to think of how many Big Ten teams would be 6-0 with that schedule, I honestly believe there's 8 to 10 teams at minimum. And I guess I know Indiana is the story because it's Indiana, and the fact that, hey, they're the first team that's become, bowl eligible this season, and Kurt Cignetti has been talking the talk all off season long, and so the fact that they've gotten to the level that they're at is quite impressive. But like, if they had played Illinois' schedule, like, I want my Indiana props isn't going to happen until I see that Nebraska game.
Sure.
Nebraska is going to be clearly a tier above every other team that Indiana's played.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think Rourke might be the best quarterback in the Big Ten the way he's playing. I got to watch that Northwestern game just because Illinois was on a bye week this past week. I wanted to kind of focus in on Indiana and see what all this hype was about. And quite honestly, Northwestern hung around for the better part of the game. And now, so for me, like obviously Indiana ultimately covered the spread, and we know, good teams win, great teams cover. That's the saying. But again, for me, I just need to see it against actual competition.
And I get that. I totally get that. But you also, and that Northwestern game. So I'm curious about Indiana's defense. I don't really have a lot of qualms about their offense. Okay.
Sure.
Because you mentioned the schedule and the lack of competition, but they're putting up a lot of points on everybody. Right. And like I said, maybe these defenses aren't as strong that they're facing this season, but I kind of just look at their personnel. And like you mentioned, Curtis Rourke, the thing about Indiana's quarterback situation is he's experienced. Mm-hmm. That is such a big key. Kurt Cignetti said it during the season, production over potential when he looked at guys to bring in, when he looked at transfers. He didn't want 5-star Georgia guys that were 3rd and 4th string that haven't gotten on the field and shown it to come into his program. Curtis Rourke is an example of that at quarterback. And having an experienced guy is so huge in modern day college football. I watch them. This is the leading rushing offense in the Big Ten, despite maybe one individual not being in the top 6 or 7 right now. They spread it around to a lot of different people. I just like what they do on offense. But, Nebraska's a great example. What happens when you get into a 20-17 game mid to late fourth quarter? Is that a game that Indiana can win? That's the thing. I think Indiana could be in that type of, 10-2 type of discussion because I think they can just score. I think that they're going to give some teams some problems just with their offensive prowess. Will their defense be able to hang around? We'll see. We'll see as the season goes along. So it's going to be very interesting, certainly coming up to see how this team does. And we're going to learn a lot about this team the next few weeks. But the good thing for IU, and I promise this will be the last IU that we'll talk about here on this program. They got to bye this week, right? They get Nebraska at home, they get Washington at home, and they get Michigan at home. Okay, outside of Ohio State, their 3 toughest games are at the Rock. It was like that for USC. Maybe we've cooled off a little bit on the Trojans, and they play Penn State, so that ship might be sailing for USC. But for Indiana, they're going to have the backing, and the Rock has been, it's getting sellouts. We're getting sellouts. We're getting a lot more energy inside that stadium now. So I think that will play into the Hoosiers' favor as well. So it's going to be, it is a proving ground coming up these next couple of weeks. But man, if they get by, like even if they split, like I said before, I think you got to give IU their props at that point. And man, if they win both of those games, they are in that prime position. So they have the chance to prove it certainly here over the next couple of weeks.
I still say Illinois and Indiana on a neutral field. I think Illinois would be the favored team. But instead of hypothetical team games, we're going to be talking about the Big Ten schedule right after this. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, Ted. Arguably, I would say inarguably, the game of the year when it comes to the Big Ten Conference is this weekend. Tell us a little bit about it.
Boy, you look at number 2 against number 3. This is going to be a freaking movie on Saturday night on NBC. When the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes face off against the number 3 Oregon Ducks, this game is littered with NFL football players. So You start to break this one down a little bit. So you got so many storylines across so many different areas. You got a guy in Chip Kelly up in the booth, the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. Of course, the longtime head coach of the Oregon Ducks, certainly back in the day. A couple of years back, Oregon was able to come into the Horseshoe and play Big Ten football and run it right at the Ohio State Buckeyes. Oregon got that win a couple of years back. So there's so many built-in storylines to this matchup. And then just when you look at the numbers besides their name, that certainly tells a story as well. So let me start first with Ohio State. I guess in this game, I think that they're the best. They're not statistically the best rushing offense, certainly in the country or the Big Ten right now. But when you look at that tandem, I think talent-wise, it is the best tandem. The offensive line is certainly playing pretty well right now. So they need to try to find a way to get that run game going, right? And I think Oregon needs to find a way to try to halt it. I think Oregon has played championship-level defense so far. I think that was the question. We knew that their offense was going to be really good this season. What was going to be their defense? Jordan Birch is playing outstanding right now. Derek Harmon, Jamari Caldwell on that defensive line. That's going to be the battle. If Oregon can contain the run game, I feel pretty good about the Ducks with that Autzen Stadium crowd behind them. You've seen Will Howard the last few weeks. He's thrown an interception in the first half of the game. He threw it against Michigan State, and he threw it against Iowa. They turned the football over 2 times in the first half against Iowa. You turn the football 2 times in the first half against Oregon, they're going to take advantage. Michigan State and Iowa did not have the offensive prowess to take advantage. So that's the thing. You got to play clean football. These teams are too good. And I can say the same thing about Oregon, right? Dylan Gabriel turning it over in the red zone multiple times on Friday night against Michigan State. You look at that UCLA game where they're driving, have a chance to really put the finishing touches on at the end of the first half, and a pick six goes the other way. Instead of 35-3, it's 28-10, right? Both quarterbacks, who I feel are in the top 5 certainly in this conference in quarterbacks, they need to find a way to protect the football in this game. Also curious to see Oregon's offensive line against Ohio State's defensive line. Now that Tyler Williams is back for the Buckeyes at defensive tackle, that's probably the best defensive line in all of college football right now. Oregon has gelled together offensively. I really liked how they ran the ball against Michigan State with Jordan James when maybe that passing game wasn't at its complete best with Dylan Gabriel. So those are just some of the matchups that I'm kind of have my eye out for in this Bucks versus Ducks matchup. When a game is this even, when personnel is this even, you got to factor in at Texas A&M, they call it the 12th man, right? You got to factor in the crowd. This is an Oregon crowd that is tremendous. This is it is loud in there in Eugene. So, and especially at night, Oregon wearing their black jerseys at night, it's going to be fantastic. So, I would be surprised if this one is settled by more than 10 points. I think this game is going to be very close. When it comes to quarterback, I trust Dylan Gabriel to make more plays down the field than Will Howard. I think Ohio State's offense is more efficient right now. I think Oregon's offense is more explosive. For the Buckeyes, it's going to be limiting those explosive plays, limiting Tez Johnson down the field, limiting Evan Stewart down the field. If they can limit those explosive plays, I think the Buckeyes stand a pretty good shot in this game. Man, it is going to be absolute cinema on Saturday night. I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, you and I both. As you mentioned, it seems like Ohio State kind of sleepwalks in that first half.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of turn it on in the second half of every game on their schedule, at least so far. They can't do that with Oregon.
Yeah.
You do that with Oregon and you're done. So
yeah, you can't. Teams are going to take advantage, and Oregon's a team that's kind of, when they've gotten ahead early in the season, they just kind of shut it down, right? That they could have, I think, on some of these teams, they could have put up 40s and 50s and something like that. But I think Oregon's been shutting some stuff down. I kind of watched the Ducks a little bit, and I'm like, maybe they're saving some things. Mm-hmm. I think I look at their first half of the season, I'm like, I think they're keeping some bullets in the holster for this Ohio State game. That's the feeling I get early in the season, and then these last couple of games, UCLA and Michigan State. That's just my gut feeling that I get when, of course, they let it fly against Oregon State. That's the feeling I get when I watch the Ducks through the first half of the season. And I think you could even say the same thing about Ohio State. I said it before about them. They sometimes, like that Marshall game, right, in that first half, where maybe Marshall was moving the ball more than they should have. I think Ohio State's just been bored, right? When you have the expectations they have and the talent that they have, like, you want to play a team that matches your talent level. And sometimes, like you said, you sleepwalk a little bit, but both teams got to be ready, certainly on Saturday night.
All right, so what else should we be paying attention to this weekend?
Yeah, of course, Penn State and USC is the other big one. That's going to be in the mid-afternoon slot on CBS. It lost a little bit of its luster after 11th-ranked USC lost at the hands of Minnesota last week. But now Penn State is the number 4 team in the country, and these are teams. I already talked about Ohio State and Oregon. I described their offense with 2 E words for them. And then for Penn State, it's just methodical. Right? They played Illinois earlier this season. They're a methodical football team. They run the ball. Now, they have been getting more chunk plays down the field with Drew Aller, but still, this is a run the football, get the tight end involved in the passing game. Drew Aller, protect the football, don't turn it over, that kind of thing. I think they have solid receivers. Amari Evans is the guy that can get over the top if they want to. But to me, this matchup against USC, it is a bad matchup for what we've seen out of the Trojans. Look at the first half against Michigan. Look at the first half against Wisconsin. Look at the full game against Minnesota. This offensive line is not improving. This offensive line is not developing. Now, when the offensive line does do well and does get protection, this offense can be one of the best in the conference, maybe one of the best in the nation. But they haven't been able to do that a lot this season against maybe some of their stiffer competition, okay? And when you look at a pass rush, when you look at offensive line, it doesn't get any meaner than the Penn State Nittany Lions. Everybody focuses on Carter. Everybody focuses on Sutton. But you got to talk about more than that. You got to talk about a guy like a Zane Durant in the middle who's very quick and agile for a defensive tackle in the middle. What Penn State needs to, or I should say what USC needs to do, they need to get rid of the football quickly in this game. They need to try to neutralize that pass rush, RPO stuff. They need to try to do anything to neutralize their tackles, to neutralize their offensive line. I think it's going to be difficult to do it. And then you look at what Minnesota was able to do in the run game, where Darius Taylor, right? This is a Minnesota team that wasn't exactly running the football all that great to start the season. And then they say, well, we're just going to get back to old PJ Fleck ball, and we run the ball. Okay. Well, okay. Darius Taylor, he's very good, but Penn State is a different animal with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, right? They're going to keep those backs fresh during this game. I watched that Penn State UCLA game, and Katron Allen, like, he's the thunder to Nick Singleton's lightning. He just pounds the rock. He just lowers his shoulder. There's a potential that this could maybe turn into a Penn State game where they just continue to wear down USC in this matchup. USC's got to find a way for them offensively to reach the secondary. They got to find a way to win those matchups out there, get rid of the football quickly. It's going to be a challenge, but here's the great thing about college football. Okay. USC, they are basically 26th in the nation. Now, all of a sudden, they win against Penn State. They're back in that playoff discussion. All right. Plain and simple, right? You got wins over LSU and you got a win over against Penn State. All right. They are on the ropes. They are that boxer. They're tired right now. They are just about to go down for the count. But are they going to hit that eye of the tiger? Are they going to hit that comeback right now? Are they going to hit the 5 moves of doom? Like, is it going to happen for USC to be able to get back and hit that comeback? We'll see. If they can, the Trojans certainly put themselves in that discussion. If they lose, this is a team that sits at 4-3. I predicted them to go 8-4 at the beginning of the season. This offensive line, Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, all with really good fronts. So offensive line needs to play well for the Trojans to play well.
Best in the world, Ted. Thanks for joining us again. Let the folks know again what you got going on content-wise.
Yeah, coming up, we got previews of Penn State and USC, Oregon, and Ohio State. And, man, we are going to dive deep into these matchups. I got my picks coming up on Friday, over-under spreads. So picking all of the games within the Big Ten. over there on Friday. Also, recently launched TikTok. So if you're on the TikTok, you can find Big Ten Ted over there and Instagram as well. So we got all kinds of stuff in all kinds of places. Always good to be on here.
All right, Ted. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
And that'll just about wrap it up for today's episode of Locked On Illini. Please, on your way out, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Helps me out. We're at 1287 on the YouTube side before this episode started. So let's get to 1290 maybe. Send this to other friends of yours who might be Illinois fans. Again, I'm doing this every single day. I try not to take breaks. Even on weekends, I try to produce some sort of content for you guys. Tomorrow, I have a fun episode. Now that we've seen where the Illini are placed at number 4 in the preseason rankings, and we had nobody listed in the top all Big Ten teams, is this upcoming season Brad Underwood's best chance to win Men's Coach of the Year? Interesting topic. Join me tomorrow. Until then, ILL, love you guys.